Hello and welcome to the Claret Blue podcast, sponsored by NordVPN. I'm your host, Dan Rolinson, joined as always by John Townley for today's Q&A. But for the third week in a row, we've opened up a guest slot and brought in Neil from the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. I'll start with you, Neil. You recovered yet?
As much as you can be. There's I usually give myself maybe about 2 or 3 hours to dwell on things like that, specifically if it's about football, and then you just got to wake up and put your trousers on the next morning and just get on with it, you know. As it's often attributed to Jurgen Klopp, but I think it might have actually been Pope John Paul II that said it, which is bringing another topic that's topical at the moment into conversation, that of amongst all of the unimportant things, football is the most important. And, you know, it's probably a bad way to start a podcast when everyone's come to talk about football, but I had to really remind myself of that when I woke up on on Sunday morning, because it was still nagging at the back of my head.
John, obviously you were there in the press box, a very different experience than the 30-odd thousand fans that would have been there, and the press box is situated more towards the Palace end as well. What was that like, mate?
Difficult. Just a bad night. Really bad night. I was going to say afternoon because at least the sun was shining, but I have 2 press passes in front of me, and this wasn't like stage or anything. One of them is the FA Cup game, and then one of them is the City game. So I'm going to throw them both over there. Won't look at them again. Terrible couple of games for the Villa, and it could have been so different because after that Newcastle match, it was, you know, we've got everything to play for. Champions League still, and yes, we still have that. But yeah, silverware won't be happening this season. The programme as well, that can go.
I'm in there. Be careful with that.
Yeah, you are. Shout out to Dan Rolinson's. I didn't actually read it, I must say, Dan, but I will. I said I would get to it, but I'm not sure if I want to look at it now. So yeah.
No, don't blame me.
And I do have an early apology as well to make, and it's related to player ratings. I've watched most of the game back, and my rating for Leon Bailey was too low. From about 70 minutes onwards, I had my head down in my laptop doing obviously work. But yeah, Bailey, I actually thought was probably one of our better players. So yeah did him a disservice there.
Yeah, okay. All right, let's dive into some questions then, because obviously they're going to be Palace related to an extent, but I don't want this to be an hour about Crystal Palace for obvious reasons. So
neither do I, then.
There are some questions about other topics as well. But first of all, a very simple one, or a complex one, I suppose, for Unai Emery in particular. Ads says, why can't Unai Emery figure out Oliver Glasner?
I don't know. It's an unanswerable question. I think there's a different man that hopefully you'll get in the podcast and then it'll be able to answer that. And he was actually in the question. And that's Oliver Glasner.
Oliver Glasner.
You're never going to get access to Emery, are you?
Not while he's still employed, no.
I joke. But no, look, I think it's very simple. Crystal Palace are one of these, they're set up to be opportunistic, and they're really good at it. And I mean that in a good way. I don't mean that in a nasty way to Crystal Palace, because I hope people felt that I gave them their flowers after that game, because they deserved it. Essentially what they did was they targeted Pau, they targeted Tielemans, they put 6 men behind the ball, and they told Mateta, run like your life depends on it. And he did. And it was very simple. There's no great master plan in it. It was try and turn the ball over from Pau Torres, or try and turn the ball over from Youri Tielemans and stop them from passing the ball anywhere else, and then converging them like demons. And that's really all they did. Villa were equipped to respond to it. It happens as regularly enough, but sometimes we can get out of it and sometimes we can't. But because of the way they set up with 3 at the back, I don't think that suits the new style of Unai Emery. And when I say that is, when Unai Emery first came into the team, we used to love playing. Came into the club, we used to love playing against 3 at the back, because we sat back more and we were less ball dominant. But when you're ball dominant like that, and Palace were sitting back, and it didn't give us any options to go to, we didn't have any ideas. And that's really what it boils down to. So I don't think there's any great mystery to it. I think it's just that Palace are really good at forcing opportunities, and then really good at being opportunistic. And again, it also doesn't happen. It doesn't help when we have this massive noose around our neck of conceding from the very, very first shot. It never ever helps. And in a cup tie like that, where Palace just want you to have the ball and try and force a mistake in your own half, because they know that they're going to be compact in their own half, in their half of the field, they turn it into a lottery. And more often than not, and when you turn a game into a lottery like that, and they get the goal early on, more often than not, they're probably going to tag on a second, because Villa didn't really have any ideas. They just didn't.
Follow on from that for you, John, from Nick. So I think it's more about what we did as much as what they did. Emery's strategy for any big game not at home seems to be to field his security blanket players and play even slower than usual. Is this latest debacle enough to get Unai to play to win these games rather than playing not to lose?
The first thing I go to is Mings has to play in this game. We said it beforehand and we'll say it after. We said it during as well. Mings increases the chances of you not losing a football game. So the fact he didn't play, I'm not going to kind of push that into the realms of, we played not to lose, because I think Mings would be playing if that was the case, if that makes sense. But I get the point about playing with... playing slower, I suppose, but controlling a match is really important for this team. When we don't have control, look what happens. I understand we had more possession and we were more ball dominant than Palace, but it never felt, as Neil kind of alluded to there, that we were going to make anything. We weren't very creative at all. There was a chance with Rodgers, but even, not to be overly critical, but obviously Luka Dean's put the ball in the box. That's Palace failing to deal with the situation that led to Rodgers' opportunity. And after that, what did we make? Very little.
McGinn had a shot that was saved. That was it.
Yeah, and then Luke Dean's had what would have been a bit of a worldie, to be honest, from outside the box. Apart from those two chances, I mean, really, we should have had momentum twice in the game after Mateta missed his penalty and after Mateta had that goal ruled out. Because although it was a soft foul on Konsa, foul by the letter of the law, however, that should be we should be galvanised by that to think, okay, well, we know we're in a game. We should have known that beforehand, but it just didn't come across that way. We were too passive. Tielemans losing the ball twice for 2 goals. So one part of me thinks Emery, firstly got it wrong for the 4-1, and then for different reasons got part of the game plan wrong against Palace. But equally, I don't think the players were up for it. I don't quite know how to quantify it, but in a semi-final, you wanted to shake them, and this is for an FA Cup final. This is to potentially win a trophy for Aston Villa. And how many times have we heard, and I absolutely understand that no one's lying when they say we need to win a trophy for Villa. We need to kind of mark this era with a trophy like Mings, McGinn, Watkins, everyone. But as a collective, there just wasn't, you had no sort of feeling of we're going to do this. And from the outset as well, and we'll get on to that later, I suppose, as well, about the start of the game and whatnot. But the whole occasion just passed Villa by, and that was the most disappointing part of the whole thing. There's a way to lose as well. You know, we don't want to lose any game, but semi-final, 3-0 against Palace, you're on national TV, the whole lot, the biggest stage, and you go and lose 3-0 and you don't put up any fight at all. Yeah, really disappointing.
Properly embarrassing. We're going to have to do atmosphere stuff now to kind of lead into a question that's for you, John, and for us as well, but not in the list, one that I've thought about myself. Did we put too much emphasis on the neutral venue aspect of it in terms of Villa's style of play? That Villa at home and Villa away are two very different football teams. They play under different style. Confidence appears to be different. We are formidable at home generally, and we look nervous at times away and scared and lacking, we might have control, but lacking any kind of impetus to go and win a game.
Yeah.
Now, I hoped and we hoped that Palace at a neutral venue was much easier than Palace at Selhurst Park, because a neutral venue, and my reasoning behind why we went so big on this is different to Selhurst, is that should be a leveller. That should give you 30,000 fans each. It should be kind of go at it, best man wins kind of thing. But when the atmosphere is what it is, and the pre-match build-up and the tifo and the flags and all that is what it is, it's Palace 1-0 before a ball is kicked. And it makes it like a home game for Palace. It
just didn't feel like we treated it with the respect it deserved, essentially. I mean, we literally reused the tifo. And I know you don't win the game from... I mean, by the way, it's a crowd surfer that was a tifo, so that already is the problem. It was far too small anyway. There's many issues with that. But in general, it just felt like we turned up hoping to win, but not really trying our hardest to win on and off the pitch.
We'll take it more seriously for the final. We'll do a better display for the final.
Vibe.
We'll play better for the final, because we'll be there anyway. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, just the fact you're reusing something you did in the Champions League. And I know it seems quite small, but that was almost like the mentality of it. It was like, well, we've done the Champions League, we've had these big nights, we've got an FA Cup semi-final. Let's hope we get something bigger and better in the final and go from there. Oh, we're 1-0 down, 2-0 down, 3-0 down, and the day's done.
Yeah.
So, we did a piece on Birmingham Live about it and the situation of why that happened. So go and read it there. The 1897 group had essentially pushed back in their plans to create what would have been, we're led to believe, a really stunning display like we've seen in the Champions League games. But Wembley's a whole different animal. We had flags. I didn't see that we had flags because I couldn't tell. The colours were all kind of mixed together. It just wasn't the effect that we'd seen previously, like in a playoff game or Liverpool 10 years ago. When Liverpool 10 years ago, there was messages in the dressing room of what fans were saying to players or whatever. That's kind of the level that they were going to back then. But for this one, it just felt like I don't know this for fact, but it felt like it was like, well, it would have had to been rushed in the end because you had an old tifo. Yeah, it's a real shame that, well, I mean, you could see as well, is it the Homestale fanatics, I think the Palace Ultras who 89 7 group take some inspiration from and war flags, etc. That's how you do it. That's how a club and a fan group can work together. I'm not talking about the flares because the flares are illegal, but the actual display was fantastic. They created the noise, created the atmosphere, as you said, they were, I don't know if they were 1-0 up, but they certainly had the advantage there. On our side, every fan in the stadium would agree that it was really difficult for the Villa fans to make an atmosphere because you almost didn't feel part of it. I remember going to playoff games and whatnot, and you get Claret and blue stripes, for example, and you're part of the Claret stripes and stuff. And you just feel like you're part of it, that you're making a difference, and you can see what you're creating. Oh, this is going to look great on TV. This will look great for pictures in 20 years. But the vibe just wasn't there at all. And it's a real shame because it should have been so much better. And I know that, obviously the fan group are disappointed. And I'm sure the club themselves are disappointed by what was produced in the end. Yeah,
I can already kind of hear people clacking away on their keyboards saying, but we didn't lose the game because of a tifo. And
I was just about to, I wasn't going to clack on my keyboard, Dan. I was just about to pile in and go,
run your mouth
I'm
instead.
going to give the 40-year-old thing here. It goes, I can guarantee you not one player noticed that the tifo was reused. I can absolutely guarantee that. I didn't notice it. I didn't notice it.
Well, I think that says more about the display in itself.
But what they would have noticed that as our fans were pretty quiet compared to the Palace lot, who were singing and chanting the whole way.
But I think all of that is a combined.
But I think that encapsulates the whole game. I think that really, I saw it. For me, I was going to say 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had tifos. We wouldn't have had, as you said, we wouldn't have had flags. It would have been just a case of our guys belting it out right from the stomach, and Crystal Palace's fans belting it out right from the stomach, and somewhere meets in the middle and it causes a raucous atmosphere. Yeah. But as you said, I think it is, and in fairness, I actually thought I didn't even notice it that much during the game on TV because you could just hear noise. But when I watched it back, I was listening out for it, and I was kind of going, it is very much Palace-centered.
It was very disjointed. Chat, but it was pockets of noise here and there, but not a kind of combined effort, which is difficult to organise. But then you see, and I didn't watch, to be fair, the other semi-final for obvious reasons. I don't care about this competition anymore. We had the worst looking the worst looking section, apart from Man City's empty seats as well. Forest did it well. Forest did it well. Palace did it well. You could take.
It was just organisation, isn't it?
Go onto Google and search Wembley and look at Newcastle early in the season. I'll guarantee Villa's end looked the poorest for a while. The flags were small. All the same colour, so like you say, it kind of blends together. I
just felt embarrassed by it. I really did. Maybe it's because I was at Wembley and I could see the Villa one and see the Palace one. I was not neutral. Everyone knows I'm a Villa fan, but literally in the middle, and it was just like, wow, and something's gone wrong there. That shouldn't happen. But obviously, that isn't the point of why Tielemans gives away 2 goals. But it just felt like the whole vibe of the game, we'd lost on and off the pitch. The fact that we didn't have anything organised properly, they did, but didn't get a green light 897 group. And the fact that happened just felt like, to me, are we really trying as hard as we want to try here as a club?
We won't go into all the details of the 1897 thing because some of that is for them, but I was speaking to one of their guys, and I know you have as well, John, for the piece you've written, and to have plans ready for, I think they had the fallen giants are back on their feet, and for some reason the club didn't want to use that despite having the giant is awake on the big screens earlier this season. It's a phrase that has been used in commentary since Villa's promotion, and I think that's decent. It was on the bits that said Villa love you more than you will know in about size 10 font. They'd got the giants are awake. I think their original plan is that they wanted a lion fighting an eagle. Fair enough. And I kind of see, actually, to be fair, why that might be a little bit of, okay, maybe not. The club said, can you do something Emery related? So they did. And then that was blocked as well, or cancelled, or whatever you want to call it. And then the banner things that were up on the stadium, they were told on the day, we've put your logo on that. See you later. That was it. And it's very, very poorly organised and really quite poor that's the way the club is treating that group. You literally see how it looks from the opposite end of the stadium against your opponent, how it could be done if you help endorse that, and it's really poor.
No, but you are dead right, Dan, and that's why, and I know that potentially the club mightn't listen or anything like that, but fans need to make that known. You said we are willing to be the 12th man. we are willing to be that extra 5-10% that we know psychologically does work. Give us something to work with here. And the club probably felt that they did with the flags, but as you said, flag choice it didn't look like it was there. And then obviously, that tifo has worked so well, and the tifo effect, should I say, has worked so well in the Champions League, whether it was a reused one or not. The fact it was a crowd surfer was another thing as well. As you say, it makes a smaller thing even smaller when it's in perspective wise, when it's and it's flat, and there is lessons to be learned there. There is, and to me it's strange because these guys are coming from American sports where it's all about crowd engagement, and it's all about the spectacle, and it's all about the entertainment, and it's all about getting fans to do their bit in the stadium. God knows, if you've ever been to an NFL game, literally they have to tell the crowd to be noisy at times, and the crowd they go absolutely mental, and there is learnings. There absolutely is learnings, without over Americifying it, the experience in the stadium,
Yeah, all right. Let's move on to some more on the pitch matters. That's enough of the atmosphere. So I already know that there'll be a certain section of the fan base that won't want us to kind of distract away from the performance. That's not what the key point is. We were crap on the pitch as well. Jonathan says to you, John, will the media, I'm just going to take that as you're the media, will the media ask Unai directly why he picked Torres over Mings?
I can do, yeah. I mean, there's probably a broader question in there. And what I would say is that, again, I thought Mings was going to be playing. I thought it was a shoo-in, really, for a game of this magnitude, and for the reasons we explained earlier, Palace, etc., what they do. The fact Torres had been well beaten by Sarr, Mateta, other players previously this season. Obviously, that's on the agenda. There's a lot on the agenda at the moment concerning Villa and their performances in the last two games. Yeah, I mean, Mings came out into Matt Law, I believe, and I'm pretty certain in there he said that he's kind of dealing with pain here and there. So I'm not going to just suggest that he's fit and ready to play every game. However, he hasn't played that much recently, so I'm sure he was ready to go and certainly play. I mean, he probably could have played with an ACL in this game. It probably meant that much to him, and to win a trophy with Villa. Of course, he has 1 year left on his deal. Yeah, as I said previously, some of these players might not get a chance to win a trophy with Villa again. I'm not saying that's Mings, but it could be other ones. So that's how big and important it was. And it, again, just felt like the whole occasion passed us by. And that's exactly when you need someone like Tyrone Mings to be bellowing from the back of the defence. Organisation, motivation, whatever it may be. It just felt like he had to play in that game, and it was definitely a mistake to not play him.
And I think in the same way that the tifo and the atmosphere didn't lose us the game, Tyrone Mings may not necessarily have won us the game either. But I think if those two things were switched and the atmosphere was better and Mings played, we'd have had a better chance. Neil, I want to come to you specifically about Pau Torres from Mikey, who says, is it time to admit Pau Torres isn't Premier League standard? The excuse is that he is good on the ball, doesn't wash with me. He needs to be a good defender, and he isn't. If Real Madrid are seriously interested in him, I'd happily sell him in the summer. Now, I replied to Mikey on Twitter and said, well, if he's good enough for Real Madrid, why is he not good enough for us? Just like devil's advocate. And he basically said the style of play in La Liga would suit him more than the Premier League.
And he's going to be playing alongside Aaron Militao. It's hard to disagree with anything that was said there. I'm not one to start selling off players.
It's Premier League standard, of course, though, Torres.
He is Premier League standard, obviously. Yeah. But what you mean is, like, the Premier League is a different league to anything on the continent. And it's not just a stereotype. It's not just a stereotype. It really is. You have to have guts and glory. Last year, we would have crumbled without Pau Torres in the team. We really would have. Like, he was a phenomenon last year for us. His passing from the back was really good. He was that quarterback. But maybe teams now just say, let him have the ball. What's he going to do? Pass it into Tielemans? Yeah, we put two people on Tielemans. What's he going to do? Go along with it? Yeah, Mings can go along with it as well. So, I think there is a conversation there. And I think there will be, I'm not going to say open heart surgery on the defence, but I do think that, people are kind of going, oh yeah, who are we going to get in up top? Are we going to get Asensio? Are we going to get Rashford? Are we going to get all those guys? PSR is also another issue as well. We are going to have to play, like, I think midfield is sorted. I think that's a given. But both other sides, both other ends of the field, I think the club are open to trading in both of those areas of the field. I think that's where we will see it. I'm not saying that the Pau will be one, but maybe somebody else comes in there. Maybe something else changes in that area to help him, because he's not a bad defender. But as people have said before, in games, we need people to throw their body at the ball, and that's just not his game. Arguably, Man City, throw your body at that ball, see where it goes. Could it end up in the roof of the net? Absolutely. Could it end up over the bar? Could it end up going for a corner?
Yeah.
Absolutely as well. And the English game is much more about that than games on the continent. And that's a well trotted out cliche, but it's
cliche for a reason.
More as years go on, it does prove fact. You even just have to look at the mismatches sometimes between English teams or British teams and European teams in Europe.
Villa conceded 61 goals last season when they finished fourth, and Spurs conceded 61 as well. The warning signs were there that the defence had to be improved this season, and even last season we conceded 5 at Newcastle, 5 at Palace. So the first and last games of the season. So maybe that's a bit of a boost it a little bit. But even this season, Villa have conceded 49 goals in the league. But if you go through the top 6 teams, so Forest conceded 39, Chelsea conceded 40, City 43, Newcastle 44, and Villa on 49, so nearly 50.
49. So, we feel like, at times we do feel like it's worse because we've given away some really silly goals. We've the architects of our own downfall at times. But, and I'm glad you brought that up, John, because it slipped my mind. I had it written down on a piece of paper here. I know we've got, 4 games left. We are on trajectory, you would hope, to concede less goals. Maybe not by much. But still,
it's still compared to our rivals, that's far too much, and that is why our goal difference. Well, we could pay for that this season, or we will pay for that this season. And Spurs, who conceded the same amount of goals as us last season, are obviously having a terrible campaign this time, and they've conceded 7 more goals than us, which sounds like quite a lot, but I don't know, considering the levels of the two teams, to concede 7 more over the course of 35 games or something. Yeah, it's worrying that the defence has to be improved moving forward and into next season. And what's more alarming is that Emery, when he first came in, we were so solid at the back, Mings and Konsa between them. As a coach himself at Villarreal, Seville, other places, he was kind of renowned for not being pragmatic, but being a manager who can coach a team to keep a clean sheet and win a game. Flipped on its head now with where he is at Villa. And I saw someone mention that can Pau complement Konsa? Like, we're going to have that conversation of maybe they're just not made to play with each other. I don't know. They're 2 very good players, they really are, but 2 very good players conceded that amount of goals. I know there's more about it. You've got Kamara, who's ironically one of the best holding midfielders in the league, full-back, left-back, one of the best goalkeepers in the world, but we conceded that many goals. It's something isn't adding up there at all.
And lots of goals coming from our own errors as well. I think I saw a stat that it was, I can't remember the number last year, but it's 40 this year, which is a massive amount more than it was last year. So whilst I look at those numbers that you talk about with our goals conceded compared to our rivals, and what is it, 7 goals, 5 goals in some instances, that's not a massive amount, but the amount of goals that have come from us doing something daft, that's the most concerning thing. I think on the Torres stuff, the phrase that comes to mind when I saw this question was, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's a period of time when Mings was playing where it's like, well, when we get Pau Torres back, we'll be fine. Now Pau Torres is there. Well, when we get Mings back, we'll be fine. I remember getting asked about, have we wasted our money on Onana and Maatsen? And then people are begging them to play against Crystal Palace. Onana, physically, right, Maatsen played brilliant the other day. Do you know what I mean? So things change so quickly that because we've had a bad defeat, Palace and City, and maybe we've blown top 5. Maybe we haven't. Whatever. We've definitely blown a chance for a trophy. This isn't, we need to sell 11 players. It's a bad time. Absolutely. I'm not getting away from that at all. I'm not justifying the performance, but you don't now go and sell 15 players and start again. Throw away the dirty water. Keep the baby.
Yes, Dan, I'm going to answer this, and I completely know that people will, how am I going to put this? You're dead right. We have to put yesterday into a box on its own and say that is a disappointment for the FA Cup. Then we have to put the Champions League in a box on its own and say that is a disappointment. Maybe we didn't get that goal against Paris Saint-Germain, but we were punching in that competition, which was brilliant. We've been up and down in the league. So when you talk about selling 11 players, I think we can all agree that's hyperbole. Some people might say, no, let's do it. Let's and then we get caught by PSR. We can't replace them to the levels, and then who do you want? We signed Jamie Vardy in a free transfer. That is also hyperbole. We go back to, when we talk about selling 5, 6, 7 players from the first team, people may be right, but it's finding replacements for them. And then people say, yes, the scouts are paid to do that. You go back to the Bayern Munich game. We had Diego Carlos and we had Torres, 2 centre halves, and both of them played out of their mind in that game against Bayern Munich.
We were brilliant against Newcastle 8 days ago.
Exactly. We were the form team in Europe 8 days ago. And now
we want to sell everybody.
We want to sell 6-7 players. Yeah. We will sell players. So for the people who want to sell players, we will sell players. There will be players sold, and one of them may be Pau Torres. Who knows? There will be players sold because we have another conversation, I would imagine, coming up later, probably a financial conversation that we're going to have. So players will be sold and they will be replaced. But it's a numbers game. You can't replace 5-6 people in one off season. And I know people don't want that. But yesterday was a bad day. Or sorry, not yesterday. Saturday was a bad day. It was a bad day at the office. Newcastle was a good day at the office. And usually what you want to do is you want your team to be more consistent. And I think it's the consistency part that's killed us this year. Potentially because of injuries, potentially because of extra games that we're playing, and the team not really being used to, I won't say not being used to those extra games, but not being used to the magnitude of those games. Like, it is a big deal. It's way different to go and play Bayern Munich at home, under the lights, and everybody, like we talked about atmosphere. The atmosphere can drive a team on and you can be ultimately drained afterwards. That's just human emotion. It really is. Our results after European games could be something we could look back and say, well, that's hamstrung us in the league. Newcastle haven't had this year. Newcastle are only 62, 5 points ahead of us. Forest are 3 points ahead of us. They haven't had that this year. We've been hamstrung by that. Context is king. We don't have to use it all as an excuse. We don't have to believe all that context as well, but it is relevant things that have happened, and we can pick and genuinely we don't know to what percentage that has caused people to underperform, and in other instances the lack of other teams having that caused them to overperform as well. So I and people will be screaming at their screens because I get a lot of I get given out to a lot for trying to be overly pragmatic, and I completely understand that, but that's just my go. That's how I do things. But we can't be selling 6-7 players in the off season this year. We just can't.
I mean, I think there is probably an argument to suggest that the squad is a little bit too big. Maybe we have too many options that players aren't even making the bench. So there will be a couple that don't need to be replaced, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that is true. Like, we can't register Marlon and Garcia to the Champions League team and can't name 3 players on the bench. So we will have to trim that a little bit, but not by much.
Villafan 1988 says, Emi Martinez, is it time for a tough conversation? We just said there about him being one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Shot stopping has been a massive dip this season. Is that just a blip or the start of a downward trend? Thanks to Alex Berwick, I saw on his social media earlier, he tweeted about Martinez and he'd got his save percentage is only a little bit down on what it was last season. I know that's not exactly the same, but 66.2% last season and it's 65.9% this season. So not a massive difference, but it does feel like Martinez has had an average year.
Yeah, no, this has probably been his worst season to be since he's been at Villa. But equally, if this was a Italian goalkeeper that we'd sign in the summer, we'd all be lauding his ability to lead from the back, play from the back, catch balls like it's nothing. Like, he's definitely one of those players, Martinez, where you don't know what you've got until you don't have him. I understand he's been at fault for quite a few goals, but that's because we rate him highly as the best in the world or one-off. So, yeah, like, I don't think it's a major problem. Obviously, that stat about conceding the first goal is scarily bad. But is that all because of him? I mean, Eze's goal, as far as I could tell, I don't think he was close to saving that Martinez. I don't know what keeper would. Like, it was a great goal. So, yeah,
it's in the middle
definitely.
Of the net, though, wasn't it? I've only seen it once. It weren't in the corner. The
main point is that Martinez is not a player that I think we should all be thinking, we need to replace him. There's other parts of the squad that you replace before you replace. I mean, listen, if I said anything otherwise, the whole of Argentina would be laughing at me. And that's not why I wouldn't be saying it. I just don't believe that he's a player that we should be pinning all the blame on, put it that way. But I'll go back to what I said. Defensively, we have to improve. It's simply not sustainable. I know we've finished 4th this season. We might finish 5th or 6th or 7th or whatever, which isn't so bad, considering we've had so many Champions League games, etc. But it doesn't feel right that we're conceding the amount of goals that we are, quite simply. There's too much pressure for us to create and score so many goals.
Manchester United thought they got a steal when Andrea Onana came in the door. Thought they got a steal. And I'll be honest with you, I sat here and I went, this guy was a good goalkeeper for Ajax. He was a good goalkeeper for Inter.
Yeah.
And he's not translated to the Premier League. And he's thrown some into the back of the net. I think realistically, the reason I'm bringing that up is because Bobby Sanchez as well for Chelsea. We knew he was a very, very good goalkeeper at Brighton, moved to Chelsea, and now all of a sudden he's being questioned, couldn't come for crosses, things were different, obviously fitting in. So what I'm trying to get at here is we can all look at Emi Martinez and we can say the one he blocks down, hits off his leg and goes into the back of the net against City should have been saved. I think that's a given. The one against Newcastle should have been saved. Didn't affect the game. The one against City did affect the game. If the opportunity cost for a player like Emery Martinez came up, and this is me talking again about, because I'm sure we're going to talk about financials in a moment. If a Barcelona got a windfall, decided, lads, here you go, there's 80 million for Emery Martinez. Martinez goes, I would love to go to Barcelona and play for Barcelona, and you replace him with a goalkeeper that's 80% as good as Emery Martinez for 25 million, the club will do it.
Yeah.
The club will do it. Unless Martinez comes to the club and says, lads, time for me to go, or unless the club get a big offer, I don't think Emery is going to be clamouring to get rid of him.
No,
I do think
not.
Emery would be clamouring to bring in somebody behind him, as we've been mentioned with that, the Espanyol goalkeeper, I think it is, for 25 million. I think that would be, at this moment in time under PSR rules, would be potentially a ludicrous decision for 25 million for a backup goalkeeper. But it might be one that we may need to make if we are entertaining, or if people are looking to bid for Emery Martinez.
Well,
so I think the conversation here is, yes, the initiative is being on about is, should the club look to replace Emery Martinez? Probably not.
It would be a massive risk to change Emery Martinez.
Huge, yeah, that's it.
Those are the facts. Just say there, Neil. It's the opportunity to reward. It's for example, like Vicario as well. I know we've got to move on quickly. But Vicario last season, for the first few months at Tottenham, fantastic! What a goalkeeper. Now he looks weak as anything. You put a ball in the box and he'll drop it or get fouled. Like you've got to be so careful what you do with that goalkeeper position. If we didn't have one of the best goalkeepers in the world, we'd be considering even more goals. And I know he's letting a few recently, but over the course of Emery's tenure, if we had a keeper, as Neil says, that's 80% as good as Martinez, we probably don't get Champions League last. No, we wouldn't get Champions League last season. So that's how important that position is across the whole team. It's absolutely vital.
We can agree that he has had some ricks where he's let the ball in. Okay, we can agree on that. But the search for perfection in any position in the field, that if you look for perfection in the goalkeeping position, you are going to be perennially pulling your hair out. There will always be a goalkeeper that will let the ball through his hands, or have chocolate fingers, or have chocolate wrists, or whatever it is. It was always going to happen. And we can always point to those. Yes, has Martinez had more than this year? He absolutely has.
Yeah, this is the first kind of like bad moment for Martinez as such, because he's been essentially perfect before now. So
yeah.
If don't get me wrong, if he doesn't get any better and it gets worse, then you'd have a proper conversation. But for now, it's okay.
When we talk about succession planning in previous weeks about other positions, when you're going to talk about, do we spend 25 million on a backup goalkeeper? If that's with the intention that he's going to be first choice next summer, or maybe the one after, and we're going to phase Martinez out, that's a different conversation.
If you can replace Emery Martinez with a 25, if you can replace him with a 25 million pound goalkeeper, that's a sensational piece of business.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, that means you've got a brilliant goalkeeper for 25 million.
If you're not going to do that, and you're going to keep him for another 3 seasons, then he goes, and then you buy somebody in the same year, and it's like, right, you've got to come in now and perform straight away. That's a much bigger task, I think. Let's move on. Dan says, could you revisit your "what would a successful season look like" statements from August? Well, I've got just the clip. What is your definition of success for Villa this season?
Staying in European football.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Continuation of European football.
Same for you?
I think we need to finish in the top 4 again. We need to finish in the Champions League again.
So success for you is top 4. And
I think we've raised the bar. That, so I'm not saying it would be failure if we didn't, but I think that we've announced our arrival now, and we've got to make sure that we're in amongst it again.
I think I'd say Europa League as a minimum, rather than Conference League. I would obviously take it, because I think you'd have a good chance of winning it.
That's why I said moving forward, because if we get Conference League, I'm not going to say that's a bad season.
Oh, I mean, I probably kind of feel the same way now, but obviously we've got the context of we've had the season and we know how close we could be. We could already be well comfortably in the top 4 if we'd not dropped some silly points and all the different things. But do we stand by that? Just Europe next season is still good.
What did you say, Neil?
I had to go back to a podcast there. What I was clicking on there was I was going back to a podcast we did with Dolan and Ty Bracey, and we did our prediction, a prediction piece. I said Villa would finish 6th in the league.
Okay.
I think I did as well.
I said we would win the League Cup, which we didn't. I said we would go out in the 3rd round of the FA Cup. I said we get to the quarters of the Champions League, though. Which so I was optimistic in that aspect. And I think I got the player of the year wrong as well, because I said it was going to be Ollie Watkins. But I suppose my big thing, with this current season is I did feel our league form was going to suffer. From the very start of the year, it was always, okay, Champions League would be brilliant. But for Aston Villa to get Europe 3 years in a row, and people can say, listen, you're, with a mentality like that will never amount to anything. But Aston Villa is a team that's building Europe 3 years in a row, considering where we've come from, and people say we'd stop talking about the fact we were in the Championship X amount of years ago and all that. But it's a reality. We're given nothing. We're entitled to nothing in this league as a club, as the club that we are right now. And solidifying ourselves in Europe with a decent, and so much so that the coefficient for our, now that the coefficients are done on a club basis with regards to the money you get back from Europe, it's really important to stay in Europe and capitalize on your opportunities to get into the Champions League when you can. That is, we all want Champions League. We all want the. And next year, hopefully, they play the Champions League music when if we're in a lower tier competition in Europe. The opposite they did this year. But once again, the perspective is you can't always be there every year until you've proven that you can be there every year. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think with the Europa League as well. To me, that is. When I'm thinking about next season, the aim will obviously be to get back into the Champions League. That should always be the aim now for Villa under Emery. Yeah. Just try and get back in there. Always be in the top 7 or 8, but with the ambition of getting into what should be hopefully the top 5 most years now from here on out.
Yeah.
Europa League gives you 2 bites at the cherry of the Champions League. You either get into the top 5 again through the league, or you go and win the Europa League.
Yes.
Which I know it's not as easy as everyone was saying to us. Like, the season's not very good this year, but just go and win the FA Cup then. And I was saying, it's not as easy as that, and it's been proven. So I know it's not as easy just to go and win the Europa League. So I think the Europa League wouldn't be a disaster by any means. I probably would turn my nose up at the Conference League a little bit.
It's not a disaster. If they get the Conference League, it's not a disaster though, is it?
No, I'd get over it pretty quickly. Like next year, I'd look forward to it. But now you'd be a bit like, Conference Leagues.
But at the end of the day, we've a lot of people who are very disappointed at the fact that they haven't won the FA Cup. You get into the Conference League, a lot of people are saying, Darren Ming said, it's all built around silverware. This team needs to frame their where they are now in the pantheon of Villa teams with silverware. I'm obviously I'm rationalising as much as I possibly can. I would prefer I'll start again in English this time. The money men would prefer to go out in round 16 in the Champions League every single year, because of obviously the boon of money you get. But we were all drinking out of the FA Cup on Saturday morning, and it's so from that point of view,
that's exactly how you need to look at it. As Neil says, the Conference League is a clear opportunity for a trophy. Full stop. And also, you don't get Europa League teams coming down. Fiorentina and Olympiacos, other teams came down. That's what screwed us up. Europa League is a clear opportunity to also win a trophy again, but also have the Champions League. Obviously harder than the Conference League, but that would be a great tournament to be involved in. So if we don't get Champions League this season, I won't be as disappointed as what I've felt as I think I would have been a few weeks ago. But that's because it feels like the Champions League is maybe a step too far for us now. We'll find out. It's still an opportunity, but obviously the Champions League would be, what a season that would be. Unai Emery, maybe manager of the season alongside Nuno or Slot. That's the conversation you'd be having. But a Europa League, as I said in that video, would be a great season, and I stand by that.
No, you said then about looking about where we came from. BZP says, in relation to some fans, pundits, players, managers' comments about remember where we've come from, when is it time to stop looking backwards at the journey so far?
Fair question.
And focus on the here, now, and future? I'm very much of the opinion that it's time to stop talking about the Championship days. When you lose an FA Cup semi-final and you get a fan say, well, could have got into administration 9 years ago. Well, yeah, it's 9 years ago. Whatever. It's a long time ago. Things change very quickly. I think even if you were saying we were 17th under Gerrard, that was 3 years ago. Like, you have time to put these things to bed and start moving on. I don't want to be comforted by a poor result or a poor season with, well, it was worse a few years ago. Remember when the top tier of the Trinity was shut? Yeah, it was ages ago. Forget about it. We're an established Premier League club by now. We're not going to be in relegation battle, touch wood, everybody, forever again, hopefully. And anyway, we'll be here for a long time. Villa will always be in the top 8. They'll always be in Europe. We'll always get to the latter stages of domestic trophies. Maybe every so often we compete for the league title, or we're comfortably third, or we have a really good season, then we come down a bit, and then a really good season. I don't want to be looking back anymore. I get it, but it's time to put that in the past now and leave it there.
I agree. And I've just said it there a moment ago when I was talking about context.
I knew this question was coming up, and I thought, oh, bloody hell, Neil.
No, I didn't. I forgot. I didn't. But the reason I said that was because, yes, like it's just, once again, it's all about, if you're not at the top table, like, what's that film, Talladega Nights? If you're not first, you're last. Like, some people have that attitude, and it's a brilliant attitude to have. But more often than not, you're going to be upset. And once again, going back to my phrase I said at the start, that of the most unimportant things, football is the most important. So make the most out of it. You know, there is always positives to finishing in. There is massive positives to finishing in any European competition, because it means that you're competitive within your league. And obviously, we want the Champions League. But I'm with you as well. I'm done with the championship days. I want to laud the players that we had there. It was great to see the likes of Conor in managing Barnsley, Glenn Whelan in his managerial technical area as well. You know, Robert Snodgrass, all these guys that we loved from all those days back then. That's brilliant. I love that. It doesn't change how I feel about them. But we've also talked about the group that we have now framing their history with this club as well. Those guys framed their history with the club. That are no longer with the club in the Championship. Now we're with a team that are trying to frame their history, and I think that's the way we should be looking forward, for very much so. And look, it's okay to feel comforted by it. It's okay for people to do that. I'm not going to tell anybody that they shouldn't do it, but personally, it's not my excuse. Sorry, excuse is the wrong word, but personally for me, it's like, I want to go, right, okay, it didn't work. What do we do now to get there next year, as opposed to going, but sure, look, it was a great day out. And that's fine. If people feel that way, that's fine.
How far do you go back? Well, in the 90s, we won things.
We do need to move on from that now. It is one of those where if Villa had lost the FA Cup final on penalties against Man City, if
Carabao Cup final in 2020 was a bit like, well, we have only just been promoted. Like, you know, we've come quite a way. Like we're going to survive, or we go on to survive. We got to a final, we lost. That, to me, that was a bit like, 2 years ago, we were losing to Derby, losing to Fulham. I get that. We're well past that now, though.
It makes it worse because you've just lost to Palace, and it's like, well, that is not excuse not showing up for a semi-final at any point in your career. If you're a Championship side and you don't show up, you'd still get, bad for it. But my point now is we've moved on, but I think the players as well, it's really important that, Luca Dean, a French international, Yuri Tielemans, a Belgian international, other players who are going to speak out about it, I don't know. You're playing for Aston Villa, you're good enough to win and go far in a Champions League, because we nearly beat PSG. If we played Arsenal over two legs, I'd back us to have beaten them. You got a Champions League final then. And I know that sounds very easy, but that is the mentality you have to have. It's not looking back and thinking, well, 2 years ago before Emery came in, I wasn't really getting a game with Gerrard. No. You're good enough because you've shown you're good enough. Yeah. If this was any other team that's achieving to get those trophies, no one looks back on what you've just done to get here. Everyone's got to get here somehow. And we all thank and applaud you for that. But as professionals, you now look forward and think, well, we have to win this trophy. We don't think about, we're 2-0 down against Palace. And you know what, though? It's been a good ride to get here. We'll be back here next year. Yeah, that's true. But also you need to couple that with, but we are so gutted that we didn't make it this year, because this should have been like it was the last game you've ever played for Aston Villa. That's how important it should have been. It just didn't feel like it there. It felt like, well, we've got more years ahead that we're going to grow and we're going to get better even still. Yeah, but you're there now. We're at the juncture where this could have been the time to end 29 years of no trophy. And now it's going to be carrying on, and maybe carrying on even more if we don't get over that mentality of looking back. You have to look forward and play in the moment now. We can't lose sight that we have just done a semi-final in a European trophy and a semi-final in the FA Cup, a quarter-final in the Champions League. We have to take stock that is incredibly good. It's just
like
now,
England, isn't it?
Yeah. Like you win it kind of like
we all get in there, but
you win at younger levels. Yeah, you win at younger levels. You're going in the right direction, which we absolutely are. But instead of becoming Tottenham, where you plateau and do that, we have to now win. It's now important.
Yes.
That's the key thing. So we've done the graft to get here.
Yeah.
Don't look back now. Keep going to win.
I'm going to put two questions here about Asensio and Rashford. Jim Panzi, first of all, says, you're given one choice at the end of the season, Asensio or Rashford. And Motor Sabbath says, would you sign Asensio? My personal opinion is no, for various reasons, and then listed 4, which I'm just going to read because why not? Number 1, forcing him into our system makes Rodgers ineffective. Number 2, he can only do it against teams who already have 60 minutes in their legs. Number 3, he's too sloppy in possession. And number 4, he's a passenger in games he starts. Now, forget what Motor Sabbath says about Asensio. Make your own minds up. Asensio or Rashford. Is anyone saying neither? Or is that just me?
It depends what competition we're in. for me. If we were to sign Rashford not being in the Champions League, I'd be surprised because firstly, I'm sure he'd want to play in the Champions League, but secondly, Villa, financials, right, wages, even £40 million, that's a good price tag for a player who can be that good, but equally £40 million, well, do we not need a centre-back? Do we not need a right-back? There's other things we need to allot. So it's going to be an incredibly interesting summer. However, just because those players have done well for us to a point, doesn't mean that all of a sudden we now need to sanction their permanent signings on wages that are going to be among, if not the most expensive in the club's history, probably. So we have to really think about it carefully. You can't be blinded that Asensio scored, 8 goals in the space of 7 games or something. But also, you can't be blinded by he hasn't scored in a few games. You have to marry it up. Emery said already that the position he plays is perfect for his system, but I do agree with the question. Rodgers' best position is that position, and off the left. I don't like him on the right. I really don't.
I think what I would do and what the club would do will be aligned.
Ooh.
I think the club are going to sign Marco Asensio. I think 15 million is not a huge outlay if that is 50 million euros. That is the actual price. I don't think it's a huge outlay. There still is a betting in process there with him that is currently going on. I don't think because he hasn't scored next month games. I was very critical of him in the game against Crystal Palace. I was because I felt he was being asked to track back too much and it just wasn't part of his game. I do feel though that I think with Rashford, and you guys have said it, I think it's Rashford that affects Rodgers more than Asensio. And the more I think about it is because Rashford has more effects, on the team than Asensio does. And in a, I'm not going to say a negative way, but people have to move out of the way. We have an Ollie Watkins. Martin Samuel wrote and sorry, I shouldn't have named the person there, but listen, I know it's no reflection in the Birmingham Mail, and what I say isn't their opinion and anything like that.
Do you want?
But I was blown away by an article. You guys, people have seen it, and I absolutely was flabbergasted by the use of the word mistreated with Ollie Watkins, and I'm Ollie Watkins' biggest fan. But from the point of view of Rashford playing up top, having to move Ollie Watkins out, I know he's polarising amongst Villa fans and he's missed chances and all that kind of stuff. Then you also have to, then when he's in the team and he plays on the left, you have to move Rodgers to the right. I don't think we're going to sign Rashford. The long and the short of it is because I think there's too many people that you got to move around there. I think the club want to sign him, but I don't think, as they say, I don't think he will be signed in the off season. I don't think he particularly will want to stay with the club in the off season. Not that we've done anything wrong, but I think in his mind he would love a break from English football. I would sign Asensio. I wouldn't sign Rashford just because of the outlay. I love him as a player. As a player, is just fantastic. I think he's been fantastic for Villa. But I think the allocation of funds, depending where we are in PSR, getting to the Champions League, sign them both. But at this moment in time, I don't think we're there. I don't think PSR wise we can afford both of them. And Asensio is the smarter choice for me.
Stephen says, whilst we're talking about the players in behind the striker, would you guys prefer to play with 3 number 10s behind the striker or 1 number 10 and 2 wingers? I can't seem to make up my mind. And I think this is probably a conversation, as you were touching on there, John, about a big summer. This is a part of Villa's style of play that needs addressing for me, with pace, something that we don't really have. Obviously, Marlon, whatever, can't even get in the team for whatever reason. Bailey coming on against Palace, I was not the only one, I'm sure, that was a bit like, what's he going to do? And then looked bright because Maatsen one side, Bailey the other, hugging the touchline, spreading the pitch a little bit, but offered something that we didn't have. So whether the width comes from proper fullbacks who are going to bomb on like a Maatsen, like a Garcia, or if Cash changes his game, if that's allowed to happen or not, that's a must if you're going to play narrow further up the pitch, or just to play out and out wingers. I also can't decide what I want, but pace and width.
If I had to build that kind of forward line and how I think would suit Emery and Villa best, it would be, this isn't a shock, it would be on the right, someone like a Bailey holding width, creating space, Rodgers in off the left, so creating space for Maatsen to go, because you see against Newcastle how important that was, the pace. We had Rob last week speaking about how important it is, especially in the modern game. That creates your width there. Rodgers can play as that kind of a 10 or even as a striker at this point. And then you have a 10 like an Asensio, someone who's just quality. I always look at Odegaard and think that's a just silky number 10 that would be, I think, perfect in our team. That just glues it together, like Tielemans does, really. So you could almost just put Tielemans there. So for me, it would be almost like a front 4 behind a striker or with a striker involved, if Matson's going down the left, Bailey's hugging width on the right, or a player like that, and then you've got Rodgers, Tielemans, or something similar, and a striker, that for me is gold standard. And then you have a midfield base of someone, I don't know, call it Onana and Kamara, and you have a back 3, or Kamara drops into a 3 with 2 centre backs. There's ways to do that, but in terms of building that forward line, I think I've seen Villa playing their best football like that.
The way that the football is going is, the positional versatility between 10s and wingers is becoming more and more. I suppose if I was to look at it, I'd probably move what we classify our 10 as back the field, maybe about 5 or 8 yards. So that we lessen the distance between Tielemans and the next man they can get the ball to. As a starting point, that's probably the way I would look at it. And I think Asensio can play that role. That's another reason why I think we should sign him, because Asensio is a really, really good footballer, and he can play in the 8th position. He can play in the 10th position. I suppose if you do move the 10 back about 8 yards, you are playing him in the 8th position. And I think that's fine too. I think Rodgers can provide you all the width in the world. I think he can. He's dribbling ability, and that's what I want to see. I want to see the players that are playing wider to be better at direct running. I don't need him to be lightning fast. I just need them to be able to beat their man and create what I would determine, or what's determined in American football, is like yards after the catch, yards after receiving the pass is what I want people to be able to create. And if you can consistently create 10, 15 yards after receiving the pass in the final third with a bit of trickery, get around your man, get defenders turned, I think that's worth its weight in gold, more so than the out-and-out wingers that we would have probably been familiar with, or are more familiar with in the English game. The Ryan Giggses and those, so I think it's much of a much, but I think Unai isn't going to do it. I think he's going to look for positional versatility of the Morgan Rodgers types to play out there, out wide, and he's going to look for his fullbacks. I do think next year we're going to see our fullbacks bomb forward more in the Matson Garcia type. I do think so. Final
question of this week's bumper Q&A then. Lots to talk about, as you would expect. From Dan B. Let's just say Dan Bardell. It isn't, but why not? Yeah. Massive fan of the pod. Cheers, Bardell. Could you talk through the ramifications financially for Villa this summer? Are we in must-sell territory, or is it more about acquiring bargains like Kamara and Yuri? Obviously, that's bargains in the sense of free transfers. They cost a fair bit of money all in, but I see what they're saying. Rodgers, you argue, is a bargain, obviously, on championship wages, not a massive transfer outlay, that kind of smart business, Garcia, etc. Are we must-sell territory, John? Especially if it's not Champions League?
Villa must sell if they want to improve. I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out. I can not do it very cop-out and just say that, by the end of June, they might have to spin a few plates. But again, that is bearing on Champions League. If they get Champions League, that helps them. But ultimately, they're still going to have to sell players to raise revenue, because that's how the model is at the moment, until they raise their revenue so much. And again, go back to what Monchi and Damian said in the interview last year. That has to happen, but they're also not scared of doing it. So I think it's something that was mentioned before of, players will continue to be sold, but equally look where Villa have got to after selling Luiz, after selling Duran, we're still in a really healthy position in terms of squad size, in terms of being close. Maybe we don't get Champions League, but we're close. Quarterfinals Champions League, semi-final FA Cup. So everything we said in the podcast, we're frustrated and annoyed about it and how it hasn't quite gone our way. But we're still in a good position, and that's through all of the difficulties that we've faced. So, the difficulties will continue to happen, is what I'm trying to say. But the business model of the club and the model and the process that they're on, Champions League would always be a bonus. They're not factoring that in every season, and they'd be negligent to do so. So if you get Europa League, selling players is going to be the norm at Villa and has been, will continue to be for a little while. Conference League would obviously damage that revenue further as such of what you could have got, but that would allow you to also keep a good squad that you could fight on domestic cups, etc. Being out of Europe altogether is the disaster for Villa, because then your squad size is lower. You can't give game time to players, so they have to go, and all of a sudden you're kind of back to not square one. You have a good 11 like Newcastle do, but they're going to have a real task to increase their depth and fight on all fronts next season, like Villa have managed to do this season. So this isn't like a really bad situation in terms of where they are financially. They've made lots of losses, but the plan is to continue to sell and buy.
Which is when we talk about not being in Europe at all, come on Manchester City for the cup final. Because if Villa were to finish 8th and Palace won the cup, no European football. Whereas at the moment, if Man City win, 8th would be Conference League, 7th and 6th the Europa League, and obviously top 5 is Champions League. Palace win the Cup and Villa finish 7th. That's Conference League. Yeah. I said this in the post-match, right? Palace get battered, and a few people were like, yeah, well, fair play to them, they beat us, best of luck in the final. No,
yeah, we need it.
If that affects Villa getting into Europe, but no one cares if Man City win it anyway. Let them win it. Everyone forget they've won another one.
I don't think they care.
Exactly. Let them win it, fine, whatever. Not good for football, who cares? For Villa, Palace winning that trophy and that affecting our European competition next season would be disastrous. So, Palace.
I agree. Much not as I don't mind Palace. So what I'm going to say about PSR this year is a lot of people are forgetting that Villa did some really, really, really smart things in January. Emery Buendia will be. I would be blown away if Emery Buendia wasn't a Leverkusen player for 20 million. Whether people think that's his market value or not, 20 million is 20 million for Aston Villa. We already know Kostin Nedeljkovic is going to be an RB Leipzig player for 15 million. Whether you agree 15 million is his market value or not, that's 35 million we have recouped before we ever need to look at the balance sheet. I would imagine those two players are going to be bought by their two teams that they're with. There's also other players that we even don't know yet that might want to go. I would imagine Leon Bailey might put his hand up and say, hey guys, time for me to move to pastures new, potentially. We're also looking at, I like it's been in the offering for a long time that Luca Dean might want to go somewhere else. I think he's playing at a high enough level to stay in the Premier League, but it's always that undercurrent of Saudi money. And that, I think, when you factor all those into play, I think if Villa were to sell a big name, it would be to be able to bring in a big name. And that is dictated by Champions League football, I think. So the long and the short for me is PSR. I think the club have done a lot of loan deals with PSR in mind. And I think that those loan deals were done smartly, because how often have we said, oh, we've got no buy clause in there, we've got no money in there, does that buy percentage or whatever it's supposed to be in there. Phil have done that this time. I think they're going to both of those players that I mentioned, Nedeljkovic, I think it's already been said will be signed. I'm open to correction on that. I would be blown away if Emery Buendia wasn't signed, because he's playing well in that Leverkusen team and he seems to be fitted into Xabi Alonso's team. And that's 35 million that you can put that on your balance sheet.
Yeah.
And remember, we needed 55 million for Douglas Luiz. That was before Adidas. That was before Champions League money. That was before John Duran. And I know we've got a lot more outlay this year for wage increases and stuff like that, with teams getting into, our players getting into Champions League for bonuses. But I think we're probably going to be okay to break even.
Don't want to make this sound controversial, but every player is for sale at almost every club, and at Villa that is the case. If someone slaps down, £100 million for Kamara, he goes.
Yeah.
Huge money there that you can use to reinvest your squad. So yeah, every player has that price, but Villa, as I've always said and will keep saying, they never want to sell. There's a group of players like last summer that they wouldn't sell because they didn't need to, but Luiz was the one they thought, okay, yeah, he can go. That player will, if they do that again in terms of a big sale, they will already know who that is. That we are a few weeks away from the season ending. They'll know exactly what they're going to do in terms of if a big player goes, and there'll be some players there who they say he's not for sale. And again, if a huge, massive offer comes in, then yeah, they would. But for now, it would be unrealistic to suggest that someone slaps down 120 for Kamara, 120 for Rodgers. I don't think that'll be happening.
What I would say is what we learned from the Douglas Luiz deal is maybe be prepared for some of our lofty valuations not to be met, but players still leave. Douglas Luiz is worth, he's had a poor season, but we'd have all put him at more than 42 million last year, but because of the way the deal was and all that kind of stuff. Other clubs don't have loads of money to throw around to give 80 million for X player.
Yes.
Like Ollie Watkins a couple of weeks ago, 55 to 60. I wouldn't be surprised if that was more like 40 to 45. And there'll be people going, yeah, but it should be 80. But people aren't going to pay that.
And that Luiz deal got a lot of hate, but I do remember saying at the time, I'm not being wise after the event, Villa had to find a buyer before the end of June. No one wants to help that club. No one wants to do that. But they found one in Juventus who, by the way, haven't played Douglas Luiz. We've been the benefactor of that. We had Tielemans in the door, who's probably a better player. So we've won in that in the end. But you're right, at the time, it looks like, what are we doing? But there's method in the madness.
Yeah. And someone asked about free transfers. I don't think it's a great crop of free transfers that are there at the moment that we think will hit the market. You're probably looking at because other clubs are playing in that sandbox as well. Like there was rumours that Kevin De Bruyne was on Villa's radar. I don't know how people feel about that, but
What do you think of Jonathan David?
Jonathan David. Oh, no, I know Jonathan David is there. Yeah, I love Jonathan David. I really, really like Jonathan David. I think Jonathan David, like, if we get in Champions League, we can entertain that. If we don't, there is no essence to him wanting to move to us. I think he moves on to somebody else. Now, saying that, I think there's going to teams that are just going to back the Brinks truck up to him as well. Like, so Jonathan Tah is probably going to go to Bayern Munich, Barcelona. I would imagine it's somewhere along those lines. Yeah. Trent Alexander-Arnold, obviously, we're not playing in that sandbox, where he's going as well. So it's a different field of free agency this year. We might be able to pull one or two out of the fire of the mid-range, the likes of Tielemans, people who didn't really want him. But, the big names in free agency, we're not going to be playing there this year.
Let's end this podcast there. It's been a bumper session, Neil. Thanks for giving up a lot of your Monday evening. This video will come out and this podcast will come out on Tuesday. So hopefully everyone's having a lovely start to their week after the abomination at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, thanks a million for having me on. And great to talk through this in a cathartic way. Get over the weekend. So thanks a million.
No, thanks for coming on. Thank you, John, as always, as well. We're going to record something else for later in the week in a little bit, and we'll be back with a Fulham preview and a Fulham post-match at the weekend as well. But thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Claret Blue Podcast, and we'll see you again in a couple of days.